are taking over your airwaves. In 3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, from the studios in the wrestling capital of the South, it's another terrific episode of The BENGEBUSTER Show. Please welcome your host, Tony Binge.
All right, everyone, welcome to The BENGEBUSTER Show. We are getting closer and closer to the end of the year. Just a couple more weeks left in the month of December. And hopefully, at this point, next year has got to be a better year. Let's hope for the best anyway, because it is going to be completely crazy if we repeat 2020 again. But this week we're going to be talking Slamboree 94, a Legends reunion. But before I can do that, I have got to bring on my co-hosts. I am talking about Jeff Patton and Chris Plano. Guys, what is going on?
Boy, Tony, thanks for having us back again. I can't believe we're 1 week away from Christmas here, and boy, the 2020's flying by, and talking Slamboree 94 tonight. Looking forward to it.
Jeff, what is going on with you this week, my friend? I know working in retail that you do, I know right now it's got to be a pretty crazy time.
Yeah, just been a crazy week anyway, but it's almost over and just a few more days to Christmas and get Christmas out of the way, and hopefully things will calm down after that.
Yeah. So how was I know last week we talked Slamboree 93. This week we're going to be talking Slamboree 94. But it's hard to believe that we only just have like one more show or two more shows before the end of the year, and we start up in January with season 3. I'm still kind of blown away that I'm on my third season of the BENGEBUSTER Show. I figured our fans would get tired of hearing my country accent and everything else, but they keep downloading. So people, thank you for that. Thank you for supporting the BENGEBUSTER Show. And Chris and Jeff and myself, we enjoy each week getting together and reminiscing on the glory days of pro wrestling. Speaking of glory days, Jeff, this past week, one of our own had a special day, and we can't let this go unnoticed. But we got to wish our own Chris Plano a happy birthday.
God, thank you. Thank you, Tony and Jeff. The day kind of came and went. It was this past Tuesday, and hey, just another year. It's just a number.
Hey, I always say, Chris, the years might go up, but I stay young at heart, and I know you do. You're out there rocking and rolling and having the time of your life, and I think that's the most important thing, that especially during this time that we're living in, you got to stay active, you got to stay positive, you got to stay. And I know a lot of days it's hard to do that, but I want to share this story. So the other day, I'm headed into the local post office here, and going to drop off a couple packages to send out. And as I open the door, this lady is there, and I open the door for her, and she's like, "Well, thank you so much." She said, "You're a true gentleman, and not many of you are around." And I was thinking to myself, well, she don't really know me that well. She knew I'm not really a gentleman. No, I'm just teasing on that when I'm saying that. But she did say, she was talking about me being a gentleman holding the door for her. But the one thing that she said to me that really made me stop for a second and go, my God, she's right. She says, "I want you to know that I'm smiling really big. I'm smiling really big. Even though you can't see it, I want you to know that I'm smiling. And the one thing I wish that you could see my smile, because I wish I could see yours." And then she walked away, and I walked on in, dropped off my package. But those words from her really hit home with me. Like, I never thought about it like that until she said those words, like, "I'm smiling, but I wish you could see it." So think about, if she's thinking that way, think about how many people in the world are thinking at it right now.
That's right. You never know. You never know when you're going to do something really nice for someone, and even the littlest things out there could totally make their day. You just never know what one individual to the next is going through.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally crazy, the time we're living in. But we got to stay positive, and I think I know, Chris, you and I have been doing this podcast this whole year longer than Jeff, and Jeff just kind of came along there the last couple of months. But it's the one thing that you and I have kind of said every week is like, well, maybe not much longer. And here it is almost a year later, and we're still not really anywhere more than where we were a year ago.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's tough. Hopefully better times. 2021's around the corner here.
I'm telling you, it's going to be good. But now on the flip side and positive side, one of the things that I want to talk about before we get into Slamboree 94, Chris, you messaged me earlier in the week. It was so funny, Jeff. I was watching this match, right? And about 20 minutes later, Chris messages me and says, "Hey, I was just watching this match," and it was the same exact match. How crazy is that?
Wow, deja vu.
I know. It's like, wow. Because I was watching the match where Barry Windham turns heel and joins the Horsemen, and literally 20 minutes later, Chris texted me and goes, "Hey, Tony, I just saw the coolest match when Windham turned on Luger and joined the Horsemen, and man, they were making some money then." I'm like, oh my God, Chris, I was just watching that same match 20 minutes ago. So good minds think alike.
Or social media follows us and pings us with things to get to certain things that we're looking at.
That could be it as well, my friend, for sure. Well, this week we are going to be talking Slamboree 94. Now, if we can go back for just a minute and think about where were we in 1994, I can tell you in 1994 I was working for Burke County Wrestling. I was a rookie, and I didn't know shit about the wrestling business. I didn't know shit about myself at that point in time. But I remember being excited to see this Slamboree. But when I went back and watched it a couple nights ago, it just didn't seem like Slamboree 94 had the flair, no pun intended, as Slamboree 93. It seemed like Slamboree 93 was, it had better matches, had a lot more going on. This one, it just seemed like everything was kind of thrown together. What do you guys think?
I'll have Jeff start first. Go ahead.
I totally agree with you, Tony. It just didn't have. I don't think they had as many other old timer guys wrestling. I think they only had like one match on the card, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And
yep.
The year before there was like 3 matches. And
yep,
yeah, it just didn't have the same. And of course, I think at the time WCW was really going downhill from where they were in '93. I mean, they just were continuing on that downward slope until I think Bischoff took over and they started the NWO faction thing going on.
Yeah, that was for sure. Well, fans, we are going to get into this podcast here and to learn or teach, try to figure out get my words right here on the podcast this week. But we're going to be talking Slamboree 94, a Legends reunion, coming up next on the Binge Buster Show.
Tonight, hang on for the ride of your life as the past collides with the present. Take a step back in time with your favorite legendary greats and relive some of their finest moments in wrestling. Then, taking it to the mat, today's WCW superstars will place everything on the line, trying to make a little history of their own. Live from the city of brotherly love, ring the bell. It's World Championship Wrestling's Slamboree 94, a Legends reunion.
Slamboree 94 was the second Slamboree pay-per-view produced by World Championship Wrestling. It took place on May 22nd, 1994 from the Philadelphia Civic Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. With an attendance of 4,000 fans, a night of legends and a night with the classics. WCW Slamboree 94, a Legends Reunion. All right, fans, welcome back to the Binge Buster Show. We are talking Slamboree 94. One of the things that really caught my eye when I was doing this introduction was the attendance. Man, was that attendance down.
Yeah, I would say so. At the Philadelphia Civic Center, it definitely was down. Interesting time for wrestling. Right in the backyard of ECW, as well. And, 4,000 with the talent that was on this show definitely raises some eyebrows for sure.
One of the things that I noticed was some of the, like when the pay-per-view started, they brought out all these legends on stage and introduced them to the crowd. And I really feel like Philadelphia was definitely not a town to do something like this in. Chris, you kind of alluded to it there at the beginning when you talked about Philadelphia was the backyard for ECW. During this time, the people of Philadelphia could care less, I think, about the old timers or the legends, whatever you want to call it. They were more, they were blood, guts, and gore, and wanted something totally different than your traditional pro wrestling. But any event, they brought out some of the legends of wrestling, featuring Ole Anderson, Penny Banner, Red Bastien, Tully Blanchard, The Crusher, Don Curtis, Terry Funk, Vern Gagne, Hard-Bulled Haggerty, Larry the Axe Henning, Killer Kowalski, Ernie the Big Cat Ladd, Chief Wahoo McDaniel, Angelo Mosca, Harley Race, Ray Stevens, Luthez, Johnny Weaver, Mr. Wrestling 2, and the sliding referee, my favorite referee of all time, Tommy Young. And then also later in that night, the Assassin, Ole Anderson, Harley Race, Ernie Ladd, The Crusher, Dick the Bruiser were all inducted into the WCW Hall of Fame. But incidentally, during this time, it seems like from 93 to 94, they cut it, they slimmed it down as far as how many legends they had on the show, but it also just seemed like it was just kind of like thrown together.
Yeah, real quick about Philadelphia. I'm not trying to put down the people of Philadelphia, but Philadelphia people are different than any other place in the United States. I mean, these are you're right, blood and guts and gore, and I mean, these are the same people that cheer when their starting quarterback gets injured. So, I mean, I've seen them do that in a football game. So, they, if you're struggling, if you represent their city and you're struggling, like if you're sports, and man, they'll let you have it, man. I mean, they're not, they boo their own team if they lose a game. I mean, they're rough people to please.
It's a rough crowd.
So, yeah, they are a rough crowd. So yeah, definitely different. And I agree, man. The attendance was terrible. The show was really not that great. But it was Slamboree 94. And like I said, before WCW was on that downward spiral.
Now,
I think also I might have seen an old clip of an Eagles game back in the day where they were getting beat so bad and Santa Claus came on the field. They were throwing snowballs at him. I think it was how
I've heard that. Yes,
how bad it was during the Christmas season. But I think that did happen at the old Veteran Stadium.
I can see that. Now, as we're talking ECW, now one of the things that I just read was prior to Slamboree, WCW approached Eastern Championship Wrestling, which at the time was ECW. At this point they hadn't changed their name to Extreme Championship Wrestling. They were still known as Eastern Championship Wrestling. But during this time, they were doing an event called When Worlds Collide. So they agreed, I guess is a good word, to let WCW come in and do this pay-per-view in their territory, so to speak. In exchange, they would exchange talent for the two big shows where WCW had Slamboree, ECW had When Worlds Collide. So the talent exchange was, it almost seems like that ECW came out ahead on this one, because they pretty much traded, or WCW traded two great talents for one talent from ECW. WCW agreed to let them use Arn Anderson and Beautiful Bobby Eaton on their When Worlds Collide event. In exchange, ECW would let Terry Funk come and work Slamboree. 2 for 1 on that one, the guys. What do you think about that?
I mean, I don't know. Just feel like there was some crazy stuff going on back then. I mean, again, I don't know who would benefit more from such, trading of talent. I really think ECW at that time was really truly going in, their own direction, and they kind of had their product. They may have been able to benefit from a couple of guys, maybe, but I don't know if that's more of a short-term thing versus a long-term kind of fix. It's tough to tell.
Yeah, really crazy. But now getting into the matches, we did have some pretty solid matches on this pay-per-view. One that was not showcased on the pay-per-view, but was a dark match that was presented there live in the arena. One of my favorite tag teams of the 90s, Pretty Wonderful, Paul Orndorff and Paul Roma, taking on two of the Armstrong brothers, Brian Armstrong and Brad Armstrong. This match was a tag team match. It was pretty quick, it seems like, and Pretty Wonderful ends up defeating Brian Armstrong and Brad Armstrong. But then after this match, we go right into the pay-per-view, and they start the pay-per-view out with a United States heavyweight title match. And at the time, the rising star, Stunning Steve Austin, the current United States champion, defending against the bad man, Johnny B. Bad. This match will go 16 minutes, 12 seconds with Steve Austin defeating Johnny B. Bad. Jeff, what are your memories on this match?
The kiss that don't miss. No, man, Stunning. I think we've talked about it before. You guys out there, listen to the podcast. You probably, if you're young, you remember Stone Cold with shooting birds and cussing out, Mr. McMahon and drinking beer and hell yeah and all this. Go back to WCW, watch Stunning Steve Austin. The man flat out could wrestle. I mean, I'm talking grapple wrestle, just an amazing performer in the ring. And, Johnny B. Bad, I thought he was okay. I know he was a enhancement talent at one time, and had finally gotten a push and was kind of running a gay gimmick, wearing lipstick and eyeliner and everything else, and lacy trunks. But it was a great matchup between those two.
Well, I think go ahead, Chris.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think real quick, it's a testament that it's the longest match on the card as well, going over almost 17 minutes. And, Austin was great back in the day. And I'm going to be honest with you, between you guys, I actually liked Johnny B. Bad. I mean, I did. I mean, never was he going to be a main event wrestler week to week, but I thought he worked well in WCW. It was a gimmick. It worked well, and he played the part well, and even was pretty good on the microphone too. And I always liked him as a wrestler, and That's just coming from my viewpoint.
Well, I've got a really cool Johnny B. Bad story that the listeners out there will be entertained by, and I know Jeff and Chris will. So, in I think we talked about this on another podcast, but in 92, WCW was about all but almost out of business, and they came to the Greensboro Coliseum, and they had advertised, if you're a student, you can come in and get a ticket for $5 or whatever. It was really cheap, right? So me and a group of people went, my friends, we went, and Johnny B. Bad happened to be standing in the curtain area, and I went over and got his autograph. So technically, he was the first wrestler I ever met, in person. And then later on that night, I got to meet, Vader at a gas station. He and Harley race, and we talked about that too. But fast forward, 30 years later, I get into the wrestling business. I've wrestled and got to work with a lot of my childhood heroes and things like that. Well, I don't wrestle full time, and I don't do this podcast full time, but I do have a full time career working for the great state of North Carolina in the school system. And I had just started working at this school, and I came into work that day, and my principal thinks it's the coolest thing ever that I was ever a wrestler or still wrestle. He thinks it's the neatest thing in the world, right? So, and he tells everybody every time somebody comes in, he goes, "Hey, that guy Tony, he's a wrestler." So he's always talking about it. Well, this one specific day, I walk in and he goes, "Tony, you got to come down to the gym. There's a wrestler down there I want you to meet." And he says to me, I don't think he's really popular, but he goes around and speaks to all the kids. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." He goes, his name is like Mark Marrow or something like that. I said, "Wait a minute. Are you telling me Mark Marrow is here in my school?" And he's like, "Yeah, he's down in the gym getting ready to do a seminar, an assembly, and he's going to be talking to the kids and telling his testimony and tell the kids to stay off drugs." And I'm like, "Can I meet him?" And he's like, "Sure, yeah, let's go down there." So he takes me down to the gym, and we can't find Mark anywhere. And I'm like, God, And then so by this time it's getting time for me to go to my class, and I'm like, I really want to meet Mark because I want to tell him, "Hey, listen, in 1992 when I was a young punk kid, I met you at the Greensboro Coliseum, and so I didn't get to meet him at that point. So I went on back to my class, and then throughout the day, they called different classes to go down and talk with Johnny B. Bad, Mark Marrow, and so when it was all over with, I go down there, and I'm like, I tell my principal, I'm like, "Hey, can I go there and see if I can see Mark and introduce myself?" He said, "Yeah, sure." So I go back down there, and Mark is about to walk out the door, and I'm like, Mark, like I knew him on a first name basis. And he turns around, and I'm like, "Hey, Mark," I said, "Listen," I introduced myself to him, and I told him, I said, "Listen, in 1992, I came to watch WCW in Greensboro, and you were the first wrestler I met." I said, "And as a matter of fact, I still have your autograph at home in my photo album." And he said, "Oh, that is so cool." And I said, and by the way, I said, that night I met you, I never, in my wildest dreams, I wouldn't have known just a few months later I would be going to a wrestling camp and learning to wrestle. I said, but thank you for, paving the way for all of us." And he's like, "No, thank you. Thank you for having a dream and living out your dreams." Because I think that's the most important thing in the world is if everybody needs to have a dream and everybody needs to do their best to achieve their dream. And I thought that was really cool. The fact that, life just kind of come around to a circle. I met him in 92, had no idea that I'd ever be a wrestler or in the ring. And then, 30 years later, 28 years, whatever it is, I'm telling him, "Oh yeah, by the way, I was a wrestler." And then he just looked at it like, "Okay, well, you had a dream and you fulfilled your dream." He's a very positive person. So, people out there listening to the podcast, if you really want to, look at yourself in the mirror in a different way, I suggest you go on YouTube or go on the Facebook and like Mark Mara's page and just watch some of his videos. Man, to give you goosebumps. Jeff and Chris, have either one of you guys got to listen to any of his speeches?
I have not personally, no.
Jeff,
No,
you?
neither have I.
Okay. Well,
No.
you guys need to do it, because I'm telling you that you talk about a motivational speaker. That guy will, man, his speaking was a whole lot better than his wrestling. I'm telling you. I'm telling you right now. He and like you can tell, you know, a lot of these motivational speakers that you go out and watch is like you see them, but you know the thing they're saying, that it's just it's a speech that they have memorized. Johnny's or Mark's is totally different than that. I mean, it's like it's from his heart, and like you can tell when he's talking to the kids that are on drugs or they've lost their parents or whatever the case may be. Like you can tell he genuinely does care for them, which I think is pretty amazing. So Mark, you got free advertising on the Binge Buster Show tonight. Now let's get back to the podcast in hand. Slamboree 94. Steve Austin, Johnny B. Bad, 16 minutes, 12 seconds. Steve Austin retains the title. Now we go to our Legends match, and this match is one of the matches, guys, I thought was going to be a really good match. Turns out it was a big cluster. Terry Funk taking on Tully Blanchard. They go 7 minutes, 15 seconds to a double DQ, and here's the backstory behind this. Going into this deal, it was only supposed to be just like a Legends match, you know. Neither one of them were signed to WCW, but, however, Tully Blanchard was under the impression he was going to go there, have this match, and get re-signed to WCW. Turns out Terry Funk had already done that. He got there early in the day. He solidified a contract, and then once they got there, Tully's like, I'm not doing the job. That ain't happening. I'm not signed to WCW. I'm not dropping a pin. And it turned in almost like a shoot fight there for a little bit, and it turns into a double DQ. Chris, I'll start with you on this one. What are your thoughts of Terry Funk and Tully Blanchard, both men coming to the building thinking they're both going to get a contract, and Terry is the one that ends up with the contract?
I'm not sure. I think maybe Tully was going into this thinking, well, you know, I was with them, you know, many years at the NWA and loyalty and things like that, and so they'll take care of me. But maybe some times have changed. You know, I even read in some certain blogs that Blanchard didn't even really want to do this match after everything that went down, but obviously did it. And I don't know. I mean, Terry Funk's going to be Terry Funk in the ring no matter who he's taking on, so he's not going to hold anything back. So
definitely not.
You know, obviously with his feuds with Flair and everything. So, I mean, so for Tully, probably not one of the best opponents to go up against, but yeah, but I don't know. I always, and listen, Tully Blanchard wrestled for me many times. You know, and was always a great guy, was always there, but I don't know, old school mentality. Something's always owed to him, kind of thing, as well on the other end. Well,
I'll tell you guys a Tully story. So one time, several years ago, probably around 97-ish, 98, there was and I won't mention the names, but there was a guy running some legend shows around the Lenore area. And on this specific night, he had this big, long table of all these legends. I'm talking, there was Tully Blanchard was there, and there was Bobby Fulton was there, Greg Valentine. I mean, there were probably at least 20, I'd say 15 to 20 stars on this card. And so a friend of mine and I decided that we were going to go up and talk to Tully and see, you know, because at the time Tully wasn't making very many appearances, but he was pushing, you know, being a preacher and everything. So I'm like, well, let's just go talk to Tully. So we go there, and my friend looks at Tully and says, "Hey, Tully, listen, I run shows around the High Point area. I would love to book you on some of my shows. And Tully goes, yeah, but I'd love it too, but you can't afford me. Just like that. And my buddy kind of looked at him like waiting for Tully to start laughing, thinking it's a joke, right? And Tully's like, the reason he goes, please, guys. Now I want you to know I'm not being a jerk when I say that. I'm just saying that I don't think there's enough money out there to get me to want to wrestle. Like I do these autograph sessions, but if you're wanting me to work, I don't think there's enough money out there to get me back. So at first we thought he was going to be a jerk, he was just being cocky, But here's the funny thing. So at the time we're talking to Tully, right beside of him is Bobby Fulton. Bobby literally reaches over Tully and hands us his phone number.
That's Bobby for you.
And he's like, brother, and I was like, okay, Bobby, we'll definitely keep your number. And of course we did, but, and we ended up booking him. So, but I thought that was, like my friend was a huge Tully mark. And when Tully told him he couldn't afford him, like his heart was crushed. But then Tully was like, listen, I'm not being a jerk. I just don't think there's enough money out there to get me to come wrestle. But then a few years later, he done that little Legends thing, when they done that pay-per-view where, Jake wasn't in the best of shapes on that one, but Tully come out of retirement. And, I think on that card, he wrestled Stan Lane, on that pay-per-view, if I remember right. But, anyway, that was my Tully story.
Yeah. And man, I mean, whoever booked this match, I mean, you're a complete idiot. I don't know who it was, but I mean, to book two guys that are known as heels, in your Legends match against each other, not really the smartest thing to do. I mean, especially when you got a heel with as much heat as Tully always has had. And, I mean, Tully's always been, I just kind of knew that it wasn't going to be as great. We were just hoping, man, if they, Tully gets screwed again. I mean, he got screwed in 88 or 89 and, Herd screws him again, or whoever's doing the booking for WCW. I don't know if Herd was still there or not, but,
no, I think at this time, Bob, what's his name? Cowboy, Chris, help me out with his name here.
It wasn't Bill Watts.
Bill Watts, yeah. Bill Watts was booking during this time.
Oh wow!
He had and the book.
He would rather, and Tully worked for Bill.
Yeah.
At one time, so it's like, man, why would why wouldn't you? And it's like in in '89. I mean, just think about it for a minute. What if they would have let Tully come back in '89?
WCW would have. I mean, they would have been in the best shape of their life.
The Horsemen, the Four Horsemen, Ric Flair, Barry Windham, Tully Blanchard, and Arn Anderson would have been reunited. Just think of the money they would have made.
Yep.
And it was all because of Jim Herd that they didn't do it.
Yep. It's terrible.
And then the defecting of who was going to WWF, years later. I mean, that may never even have occurred with several guys.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, overall, and re-signing Tully in '94, I don't know, but '89 makes a lot more sense to me.
Oh, and I heard that the finish was supposed to be from what Tully said in one of his shoot interviews, is the finish was supposed to be, Terry was supposed to set two chairs together, and he was supposed to pile drive Tully through the chairs, and Tully said, "I'm not taking that."
Yeah.
You're not doing that to me, no.
Yeah, at that time I think Terry was definitely off his rocker. So kind of a sad, for us old school guys to be ripped off from a great pay-per-view or a great Legends match. speaking of legends, going on to the next one. This match is 11 minutes 30 seconds. The living legend Larry Zbyszko taking on Lord Steven Regal. Zbyszko ends up winning this match. Wasn't for any kind of title or anything like that. They had like a little feud going on, and it pretty much was over as fast as it started on this one. But now going to our next one, this one is one of the matches that I watch and I laugh, and I've told the story, the backstory, on other podcasts. But we got Dustin Rhodes taking on Bunkhouse Buck in a bull rope match. Now they had another match, I believe, on another pay-per-view right before this one. But Dusty, and it was a bunkhouse match. So I think they had like 3 different matches. They had a match, and then they had a bunkhouse, and then they had this bull rope as the blow off. But, and the bunkhouse match was so cool. And I've told the story, and I'm gonna tell it real quick again. But Bunkhouse Buck and Dustin are fighting, and they're going all over the place. They're in the floor, and Dustin brings out a 1x2. And he told Buck that, hey, I want you to hit me with this stick, on the floor. And Buck's like, I don't know, Dustin, that thing's awful small. If I hit you with it, it's going to break. He goes, no, it'll be fine. Well, it wasn't fine. Buck ends up hitting Dustin in the back, and it breaks and goes flying into the crowd, and it hits this mark. And when I talked to Buck about it, and Buck was like, yeah, here's what happened. And he tells me the story. And he says that when he hit Dustin and it splintered off and flew into the crowd, it hit a mark, and that mark was like, I'm going to sue you. And Jimmy Golden, which is Bunkhouse Buck, in his country accent, and the cameraman is right in his face when he says it's so cool. But he says, sit down, geek. Sit down, you stupid bastard. And it's so funny the way he says it. So now every time I run into Jimmy Golden and he sees me, he'll go, sit down, geek. Sit down, you stupid bastard. He says it to me because he knows I'm going to crack up. and every time I see him, I'm like, Buck, you need to say that to the crowd out there. He said, I can't do that, brother. I can say it to you, though. And so I thought that's pretty cool, though. But this match, bull rope match, 12 minutes, 47 seconds, Dustin Rhodes over on Bunkhouse Buck with Colonel Robert Parker. And I've spent some time with Robert Parker too. He's just as funny as Bunkhouse Buck, and in reality, guys, they are related. They're I think brother-in-laws. But anyway, Jeff, I'll start with you on this match. Dustin Rhodes, Bunkhouse Buck, bull rope match. What are your thoughts?
Oh, great match. Dustin Rhodes, I thought, was a really good wrestler, and I loved Bunkhouse Buck. The first time I met him, I really liked him. He's just a really cool guy, down to earth. And I remember he had he had the 2 weights or wheels with the rod, and he was laying on his knees, and he was loosening up his back before his match. He rolled that little thing, and it's funny. I mean, I can't really describe how he was doing it, but it's funny watching him warm up before he'd go out and wrestle. Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I had booked him for a show, and I said, Buck, I got you on this card. I said, we're going to do a tag match, a bunkhouse tag. I said, it's going to be you and me taking on my cousin and a guy named Donnie. I said, but matter of fact, I said, you've worked Donnie before. And Buck is so funny. He's like, well, Tony, now don't put me in the ring with somebody that's going to hurt me. And I'm like, Buck, listen, ain't nobody going to hurt you, I promise. And it turns out, you remember this match, Jeff, that he was out there and he was beating the crap out of Donnie. Donnie was screaming because Buck was whipping him with the belt.
Yeah.
On my card, and Donnie starts screaming, and Chris, Buck goes, hey Tony, we got him squealing like a pig now, don't we?
Oh gosh,
I was laughing my butt off. And then we get done with the match. We get done with the match and get back to the back, and Buck's like, Donnie, brother, you okay? And Donnie's like, yeah, brother, it was good and snug. And Buck goes, that's how I like it. And I was like, oh my God. You remember that, Jeff?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. He was hitting Donnie so hard with that belt. I'm over there with Mark, and Mark goes, you better stay with me on this one, because I don't want to be like Donnie, be over there screaming. I said, no, he ain't going to do that to you. I said, Donnie must have stiffed him, and he's getting Donnie back. But that's how they worked. I mean, that was Bunkhouse Buck for you. Now going on to our next match. Now this match has a little backstory, because in '94, WCW was trying their best to, or they were toying with the idea of signing Hulk Hogan, and I think at this point they were talking to him, but he hadn't made his decision yet, or maybe he had signed and they were just playing it up. But in any event, they were teasing the people, making the people think that Hulk Hogan was coming to WCW, because Colonel Robert Parker came out there and was challenging Ric Flair for the world title, and he's telling him, I'm going to bring in a blonde-headed 300-pound former world heavyweight champion, and now all the people are thinking it's Hulk Hogan. Turns out it's Barry Windham, and whenever Barry is coming out from the ring down the aisle, Tony Schiavone makes a statement. He says, my God, when you look at what's walking to the ring. And Barry was over 300 pounds. I had never seen Barry this big in my entire life. This match goes 13 minutes, 21 seconds, and definitely not a classic Barry Ric Flair match that we were accustomed to seeing from back in 1987. Chris, I'll start with you on this match. What are your thoughts, Ric Flair, Barry Windham?
I mean, at first glance, you got to think main event on the show. I mean, in any arena, in their prime, you would think you're going to get a great match no matter what out of them. Obviously, Windham was out of shape here. Flair's going to give it his all no matter what, especially coming in as the champion on, if it's a pay-per-view, if it's a house show, or if it's a TV taping, you know what you're going to get from Ric Flair. I don't know. I mean, it's the third to last match on the show. It's not the main event on the show. It's just there. I don't know about the Hulk Hogan tease thing. I get where they're coming from there, and obviously he came in, a month or two later, but I don't know. I mean, it probably could have. I mean, the match definitely wasn't, from what I read, one of their best by any means. Though, if you're a wrestling guru, you're going to watch it no matter what.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was a good match. It just wasn't a classic, and of course, Barry was not in the best shape of his life during this one. And I think Windham was still a little upset that Flair left, came back. As soon as he came back, first match out, they put Flair and Windham together, and Flair ends up taking the title. But 13 minutes 21 seconds. It was an okay match, but like I said, it wasn't the best. Jeff, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you guys. This was let down. First of all, you let the fans down because everybody thinks, oh my gosh, Hulk Hogan's coming, and he doesn't come. And then you bring out an out of shape Barry Windham, who can't perform to Barry Windham's, past wrestling in the ring, and then you have the match that just wasn't all that great. And again, you let the fans down. So.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they definitely built it up, and like you said, they had everybody thinking, hey, this is it, man. He's coming in. It's going to be Hulk Hogan for sure, and it turns out it was Barry Windham. But then from there, this right here, like I'm with you guys, should have been the main event, but it turns out we have a match specifically just for the great fans there in Philadelphia. Cactus Jack and Kevin Sullivan taking on the Nasty Boys. in a Broad Street Bully match for the WCW Tag Team titles. They call it a Broad Street Bully, but it's really a street fight. Now, Cactus Jack actually replaced an injured Dave Sullivan in this match. This match will go 9 minutes, 56 seconds, and they beat each other with everything they can get their hands on. And they have a special guest referee, Dave Schultz, hockey player for Philadelphia, is a special guest referee. This match was definitely just a special attraction for the fans right there in Philadelphia. And during this match, they're all chanting ECW, ECW. Because basically is what it is. It's an ECW match. I mean, they kill each other. Chris, I'll start with you on this one. 9 minutes, 56 seconds of street fighting. What are your thoughts?
I mean, that's what you got. I mean, you got Cactus Jack in there, Kevin Sullivan, you know what you're going to get. And the Nasty Boys, hey, even in their, WCW days and they're in the WWF, I mean, you're going to just get a brawl, and all four of those guys like to brawl. I've had the Nasty Boys work for me a couple of times in the past, and that's what they like. I mean, that's them. That's what they do. That's what you're going to get, and so it's pretty straight forward with them. And I did look up Dave Schultz at this current time, and I think that record probably still is intact. Had the most penalty minutes ever by a player in the NHL as an enforcer and a fighter.
Oh, wow.
So that was his claim to fame with the Philadelphia Flyers. I Googled them real quick, and I'm sure probably that record is standing today or pretty close. But, I get the angle there as the referee, and you're going to just get that. He probably had no control of the match from when the bell rang.
Yeah, it was definitely it was out there, that's for sure.
Just real quick, think about it. They only sold 4,000 tickets when they had the goon from your hockey team as a referee. They had possibly Ric Flair versus Hulk Hogan, and of course it didn't happen. They had Terry Funk, who was one of the biggest stars in ECW. So it's crazy. And then, of course, they had all the legends. But the fact that they had that on their card and still couldn't draw, that's kind of crazy.
It is. It is still, Philadelphia is WWF territory, as well. ECW made great inroads in that area. There's no doubt about it or even debating that. But I don't know. It just seems awfully low to me, just overall, and where wrestling was at this time, and maybe where things were going, or even was WCW hitting Philadelphia on a regular basis, and it was just more of a spot show than anything else that was a pay-per-view.
Well, just think about it. 6 years ago, in '88, isn't this where the Midnight Express defeated the Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson to win the NWA World Tag Team title?
Yes, it sure was, Jeff.
Mm-hmm. It was packed to the gills. So, quite a difference.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Philadelphia was a stop on the Great American Bash. I mean, it was just, where were they at this point? Were they even? Was it more just we're coming to Philadelphia in May, and let's see what the heck's going on.
Yeah, I think that was definitely it, and totally different times for sure. Now we're going to our main event. Now this match was supposed to have been originally Sting taking on Ravishing Rick Rude, but Rude had to be replaced by Sting. I'm sorry, I said it wrong. Vader was originally scheduled to wrestle Rick Rude, but then Sting had to replace Rude because when they were over in Japan, Rude actually suffered a career-ending back injury while working a match with Sting. So this match is for which was originally called right before this the NWA Heavyweight Title. NWA pulled out of WCW. So they kept the belt, but they renamed it the WCW International World Heavyweight title. Now, that name just sounds redundant to me to begin with. But in any event, Sting taking on Vader, and Sting wins the title back. 13 minutes, 54 seconds. Chris, I'll start with you on this one. WCW International World Heavyweight title. Come on. What kind of name for a belt is this?
I don't know. I mean, obviously they were recognizing both the World Heavyweight Championship and the International World Heavyweight Championship at this time. Coincidentally, both this match and Flair's match went almost the same exact time limit. If that's by design or not, I'm not sure. Obviously Sting and Vader were up top, and Flair and Wyndham were not. I don't know. I mean, obviously, great for Sting going over in this match. Obviously, probably the most popular wrestler in WCW at this time from a babyface standpoint. So, I mean, you're going to get what you're going to get. I mean, and Sting and Vader had great matches, I mean, throughout their storyline. So, I mean, it just where was WCW going with this? But, I'm sorry, so the vacant international champion, but still, obviously, Sting going over here. But, interesting times to say the least. I would not think this would be the main event on the show, but obviously it was.
Yeah. And as far as, like, imagine how good this match would have been, Vader versus Rude. I would love to have saw that match for sure. But Sting and Vader have, they definitely had a history behind them. Some of the matches they had from '92 were very intense, and probably of all the guys that ever worked with Vader in WCW, I think Sting probably had the best chemistry with him. But either event, this match to be the main event on this show just kind of goes to show you just where the booking, or how dumb the booking was during this time of WCW. Guys, you guys have any final thoughts on Slamboree 94? Jeff, I'll start with you.
Yeah, just to me, I mean, I think I remember watching this, and it was just a disappointment. I mean, you spend your money. I can't remember how much it was. I guess it was $40 to $50 at the time, and it's just, to me, it was, I feel like I was wasted my money. I mean, there were a couple good matches, but then there was just, I mean, it wasn't the same as '93. I mean, but it is what it is. It'll go down no matter what. And they had a couple, the one title change, right? That was the only title change, was the international title. Yeah. So,
yeah.
So, and then the Legends match was a disappointment. So all in all, I'd give it a 3 out of 10, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I'm there with you on that.
I would say so. And there's a lot of bleed over here from the WWF. I mean, you got Bobby Heenan was commentating, Gene Okerlund, Jesse Ventura. I mean, there's some bleed over as well, just, talent moving around. If you take away the dark match, 4, 5, 6 of the 7 matches were singles matches on the show. Besides the tag team match, which was the semi-main. It was just an interesting time. As I say every week, if you're a wrestling fan, it was a great time to be a wrestling fan. If that was your thing back in '94, was it the best pay-per-view WCW ever put on? Not even close. But a testament to all the legends that were on here too, and respectful to all those legends that were on there. I just don't think a lot of them that were on this particular pay-per-view just resonated with wrestling fans in the Pennsylvania area, the Philly area, or even up towards the Northeast. I think a lot of them were more Southern based and out in the Midwest, and it might have resonated more better in a different city.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But I feel like when they do these events like this, like Slamborees, if they'd have kind of goes back to the Crockett area. If Crockett had left Starrcade in Greensboro, Crockett would probably still be in business. And I feel like if WCW wanted to do a great show for the legends, then they should have left it in Atlanta or brought it to Greensboro, someplace in the Southern Belt. I believe it would have been a better draw.
Totally agree with you on that one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. May's a tough time. I mean, it really, really is. You got spring, summertime, and in Philadelphia in May, they got basketball going, they got baseball going, hockey's going. It's a huge sports city, and it just right up on Memorial Day weekend. And like, where did this kind of fit in Philadelphia? Was it the right time to be doing it? And it's an interesting city, like Jeff said earlier in the show, and they're very loyal, and I think it showed by the turnout. And I don't know what the buy rate was on this show overall from a pay-per-view standpoint, but I think it showed at least from a live standpoint. Yeah,
I agree with you 100%. All in all, I mean, I'm a Jeff. I give it a 3 out of 10. It did have some solid matches on there, even though it just seemed like it was thrown together. But now, fans, next week is Christmas Day. The BengeBuster Show will not be airing on our normal Wednesday or Thursday, but we will be having a show Christmas Day. So whenever you get done, open up your gifts, you get done eating the ham and the turkey, and you get done hearing all the kids fight over whose toy belongs to who, and you want to escape and put the headphones on and listen to the world famous BengeBuster Show, then Chris and Jeff and myself are going to have a Christmas edition of the BengeBuster Show. And on that show, we are going to be talking Clash of the Champions 4 that took place December 7th, 1988, with a cool tagline of Seasons Beatings. And that's going to be the podcast for next week on Christmas Day. We got about 5 big matches on that card that we're going to be breaking down for you. But Chris, Jeff, you guys have any parting words before we go off the air tonight?
No, great show. Looking forward to next week and the couple of shows left we have in 2020. And I know we got some big things planned for 2021, and we'll be right up on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day next week.
It's going to be good. Jeff, you got anything?
I think Chris summed it up. Going to be an interesting last 2 podcasts of the year, and we'll look forward to 2021.
Sounds good. Well, fans, make sure you go download us on your favorite podcast platform and go like our Facebook page. Give us a like and message us on our Facebook page. It may take me a minute to get back to you, but I will get back to you. Or throw us a comment. Tell us what you might like to see differently on the shows next year. The very first BengeBuster show, season 3, is set to air. Let me check my calendar here, but I think it's set to air on January the 6th. That will be our New Year's edition. So make sure you tune in for that. But other than that, I think that's going to wrap us up for this week. We look forward to seeing you on Christmas Day. So stay tuned. We'll see you next week on the BengeBuster Show.
Thank you for listening to the BengeBuster Show. Make sure you like us on Facebook and download us on your favorite podcast platform.